there are those scholars who have argued, and I know that this is ridiculous, but there are those who have argued that we're not supposed to go back to discover the correct manuscript, and whatever manuscript we have, that's somehow sanctified. When did that idea emerge? In other words, is this a view that anybody had before the time of the Achronim, or is this a completely new idea of the last
No,
100 years?
it's not 100 years. It's approximately 250 years. It's basically, this is essentially a perverse response, well-intentioned perhaps, but a perverse response to Reform Judaism. In other words, just as is famously attributed to the Hatham Sofer Zitzal, the expression Hadash Asur min HaTorah, which is taken out of context from another halachic context, but the words can be understood to mean anything new is Asur min HaTorah. In other words, nothing can change. In other words, Judaism is all about arch conservatism. Nothing can be changed. Nothing can be touched in any way. Now, is that true? No, it's not true. But when you are fighting a war against Reform Judaism, which came to undermine Judaism altogether, then you can understand why that kind of a response would be forthcoming. It was part of that war against Reform Judaism. So therefore, anything at all that they say, even certain things they may have said but that were true in some way or could have been considered a reasonable claim, anything of that sort must be rejected out of hand. And therefore, this attitude became second nature to Orthodox Jews. And therefore, anyone who says anything at all about changing, acting differently, explaining differently, anything at all from that which was yesterday is immediately is suspect of being some kind of Reform Jew, and or worse, and therefore to be ignored and also to be persecuted. And therefore, if there are people who say, well, you know, our books say such and such, in our Gemara it says this, in our Rambam it says that. Well, what do you mean by our Gemara? Did you check how this text before you came to be? Let's have a look, shall we say, at the first printing of the Talmud Bavli in Venice, in Resh Pei, 1520, Leminyanam, and let's see what it says there for a start, because all subsequent printed versions of the Talmud are based on that edition. And lo and behold, you will find many times that there's a difference, especially when it comes to these questions of censorship. So why is this Gemara, our Gemara, more than that one over there? Especially since this one is based on that one. And then if you really look into it, you discover that over time, as we described, the entire industry became an industry of censorship. And it affected all the major Jewish texts, certainly the halachic texts, but all the major Jewish texts, the Mishnah, the Talmud, Bavli, Yerushalmi, Tosefta, Tur, Shulchan Aruch, Rambam, you name it, Rif, wherever it was, you look, everything was changed. Everything was everything that they did not find favor in their eyes, they censored. And very frequently, over time, Jews did not know any longer that this had been done. So that's a very foolish and meritless position. That this is what our Gemara says. Well, none of the Rishonim ever says such a thing. What the Rishonim all the time do, if they are aware of various Girsaot, various readings of a text, they talk about them, and they try and understand which is the more correct reading. And if it's not clear, then they say, well, you have to examine this as follows. According to reading A, this is how we should understand it. According to reading B, well, you have to understand it this way, etc., etc. And it was possible frequently, correctly, to draw distinctions between one source and another source. Rabbeinu Tam famously relied on ancient texts and manuscripts that he found, as he himself writes, and the Rambam did exactly the same thing, as Rambam himself writes explicitly when he talks about Talmudic texts written on gewil, on parchment, on leather, that he found 500 years earlier than his own time. In other words, mistakes creep in over time, just plain mistakes, other times deliberate mistakes or deliberate censorship. There's also simply a matter of mistakes when people copy and make a mistake. And over time, these mistakes are copied again and again and disseminated more and more widely. So, but all this was known to the Rishonim. There was nothing new. All the Rishonim were aware of this fact, and they all speak about these things. The Rishonim literally hundreds of times will write, bisfarim daukane, in inaccurate texts of this Masechet, this tractate. It says such and such. Well, how do they know that was more accurate than another one? Because they could see, they could tell it was older. They compared and the various texts before them, and they saw this is a reliable, accurate text, and the other one is less so. So all these things were normal and understood by all people, and anyone who makes any claim to the opposite nowadays it's some kind of knee-jerk reaction which became ingrained in the Orthodox community to treat with suspicion anything which is different from what you were used to. I mean, it's ridiculous. It gets to the point where there's a line was removed from Alenu l'Shabe'ah, as we all know, and that line was removed for obvious reasons, because the Gentiles did not appreciate being said about them that they worshipped empty, meaningless things, and then some people, seeing that it was reintroduced in some Sidurim about 50 years ago, shall we say, for the first time, some people looked askance at that. Where did this come from, this line? I'm not used to saying that. It's not what my father said, which is true, but that doesn't make it correct. And thus we have to deal with all such things. We have to understand where these positions originate, and that they are time sensitive. They pertain to a certain period for certain reasons, and we have to be able to get over that. And obviously, we have to study Torah from accurate sources, and not a source which is inaccurate or censored in any way, because the outcome can be very serious.